Greetings, COM 111 students. As you know, my name is Dr. Kelly Brennan. So today we're going to be talking about communication confidence. As we mentioned already in another class, the number one fear among most college students is the fear of standing in front of others and being able to speak. And as we know, the second fear is death. And if you recall what I said, the great comedian Jerry Steinfeld said that if I was enrolled in a college class of public speaking, and during that term I was going to go to a funeral, if I had these same two fears in the same order, at that funeral I would rather be in the casket than delivering the eulogy. Though I can't guarantee that you won't die at any of your speeches, I can guarantee that with a little practice and a lot of mental preparing, you can learn to speak with confidence. So today we're going to talk about how to do this. Now, one of the very first things that we can do is that this is a tool that was developed in 1947 by Dr. Joseph Ayers and Timothy Huff from Washington State University's Edward R. Murrow School of Communication. This tool is known as the anxiety reduction tool. And this tool, they advocate that just before you go to give a speech, write down anything that you are thinking and or feeling right before you give a speech. Then, of course, you come and you give a speech, and then sit back down, take this form, and write down anything that you might have been thinking and or feeling during the speech and even after the speech. Now, we know in psychology there is what we call the fight or flight gesture. Most of us will grab the bull by the horns and stick through this and be able to go ahead and give our speech. But even though there's a lot of anxiety, there are some times where students do bolt for the door. And in case you're wondering, have I ever had anyone run for the door? I've had a few. I was able to catch most, but there were a few that I think are still running. Now, as you look at this tool known as ART, Anxiety Reduction Tool, most people tend to have a lot of their anxiety before they give a speech. There are some that are just fine before, but literally during their speech, about a minute into their speech, they start to get this overwhelmed feeling. We call that delayed communication apprehension. And yes, there are very few that are just fine before and during the speech, but then when they sit down, they have the extended delayed communication apprehension, where they might start to shake and realize what they had just experienced. So when you look at this tool, known as ARTS, the Anxiety Reduction Tool, for those who have had a lot of experience, this tool may not help a lot. But for the majority of us, each and every time you go to give a speech, if you can identify how you may tend to stress out, whether it's before, during, or after, you know the old cliche, knowledge is power. The more you know how you tend to stress out, the more you're in control of channeling that energy to serve you rather than have it hinder you. I know what some of you are thinking. Why are we focusing on this? Let's just pretend it isn't there and maybe it will go away. The thing about your fear is that if you ignore it, it won't go away. The only thing that's going to go away if you ignore it are your teeth, not your anxiety. So when you look at the benefits of public speaking, the Department of Education has said in 2010 that we learn 10% from what we read, it goes up to 20% from when we hear it, goes up to 30% when we see it. Look how much it goes up when we speak it. I remember being in graduate school and hearing my graduate professor, who was Dr. Joseph Ayers, he said, the greatest learner in your class will be you. And I thought, what a perk, that I'll learn more than any of my students. But if you think about it, who do you think is going to be the biggest benefactor of your speech? It'll be you, because you will have learned the most, because to be able to come up here and present it, that means you have to know the most. So, I'm wanting students to look like this, to feel poised and confident, not like this. So, Harvard Business Review said in 2005, in a recent survey of 428 personnel managers, here's what they said was the most important thing that they were looking for in job, employment, or obtainment, and even promotions. And if everything being equal, being experience, education, and what have you, it really boils down to who is the better communicator during the interviews. It's interesting, long gone are the one interview only, even to get entry-level positions. Now it seems like there's a series of interviews before you can even get a job. Communication is what's going to set you apart, head and shoulders above the rest. In that same year, the Department of Education said this: language and thought are interconnected, and as undergraduate students develop their linguistic skills, students hone the quality of their thinking, and they become intellectually and socially empowered. Knowledge and the ability to be able to communicate is power. Now, Lee Iacocca, who used to be the chair of the Chrysler Corporation, and prior to that, the Ford Motor Company, here's what he said was the greatest thing that he'd ever learned in college. He said, the most important thing I ever learned in college was how to communicate. You can have brilliant ideas, but if you can't get them across, your brains won't get you anywhere. Ralph Waldo Emerson also said, all speakers are once bad speakers or beginning. You have to believe in yourself and know that it's up to you and no one else to choose to be great. He says, choose now to be great. Not last week, not tomorrow. Choose now. Now, I'm sure a lot of us know the ex-TV talk show host, Oprah Winfrey. Oprah, an average girl, said of her success, I don't know what it is that connects people to me. I'm just myself. And I think it's because of my confidence and my ability to be able to communicate that enables me to be successful. And here was an individual who came from very meager means and ended up, after about 25 years of hosting the Oprah Winfrey Show, went from having barely anything to being worth billions of dollars. When asked by Barbara Walters, what do you contribute your success to? She said, I really can't tell you, but there was a quotation that I saw. It was anonymous, but it really struck me. And it said, nothing happens until you decide. Choose now to decide. So if you want to be a great communicator, a great public speaker, a great husband, a great wife, a great friend, a great person, you have to choose now. Because it's making the choice that says that from this point forward, I will be able to do all that I need to do in order to be able to accomplish the thing in which I need to do. So what stops people? Well, the fear of speaking in front of others. In academia, we call it communication apprehension, also referred to as stage fright. Now, the two gurus of the study of communication apprehension was Dr. Joseph Ayers and Timothy Huff from Washington State University's Edward R. Murrow School of Communication. Here's what they said. They said that natural nervousness is defined as extra adrenaline and energy. Extra adrenaline and energy. Communication apprehension is fear. or anxiety associated with real or anticipated communication with others. Now, I'm sure if I were to look around the room and say, how many of you have been to Disneyland, you'd raise your hand, some of you. And then I would ask you, well, how was it when you went for the very first time? You might say, oh, I was really excited. And I remember I was 40 years old before I was able to go to Disneyland for the very first time. And I don't know who was more excited, myself or my kids. When that park opened, we ran from ride to ride. And then, of course, when it closed, we had to wait till the next day before it was going to open again. We were excited. And if you look up what is excitement, it's extra adrenaline and energy. Extra adrenaline and energy. Sounds familiar. What makes one excitement and one nervousness? Perception of mind. If I say I can't, I won't. It's called self-fulfilling prophecies in psychology. You tell yourself something long enough, oh, it's going to happen. And the opposite's true as well. If I say I can, I will. It may not be as easy as flipping a switch, but the more you tell yourself that you're going to, the higher the probability is that you will. Just like if you tell yourself you can't. So what are some of the causes? Well, it might be that you might have gained this through your heredity. If you grew up in a somewhat nervous family, the child cannot help but become what its environment is. It might be learned apprehension. Maybe you had a bad experience in school or a bad experience at work or just with a group of friends. And every time you get into those same like situations, you feel that same apprehension. And it might be that you don't feel like you have the skills and you feel like you have this deficit, which is, of course, the purpose of taking this class. So here is what Ayers and Huff found. Of the average adults, about 40% have high anxiety. Those are the ones that run for the door or put this class off to the very bitter end. When I taught at the four-year college at WSU in Pullman, every spring term, about 70% or more of the class was hopeful graduating seniors at the end of that term. To which I said, let me see if I understand this. You have put this class off for 3.5 years in hopes in one term you're going to learn how to do the talk so that you can do the walk. That's a lot of pressure. I always advocate students when I'm advising them, take this class in your first year of college. It not only increases the probability of your learning, but also enables you to learn what kind of a communicator you are that will help you in all of your other classes. Notice that whenever you look at any of these percentages, there's no zero. Even the most veteran of all speakers get a little angst. And the reason for that is because it shows you care. If a speaker goes, oh, I never get nervous, I'm going to run over there and make sure they have a pulse. Because even the most veteran, Barack Obama, was quoted as saying, anytime he went to go and give his State of the Union addresses, how his heart would beat extra hard. He would sweat a little bit and get a little nervous. But he knew that was a good thing because he was able to channel that nervous energy to serve him rather than have it hinder him. So, for the next few moments, we're going to talk about what Ayers and Huff discovered in their over 50 years of research on communication apprehension. That most students taking this class tend to stress out physiologically, emotionally, and psychologically. Let's look at these individually. Physiologically means the way your body is going through certain physiological changes. Maybe sleepless nights, you toss and turn. Upset stomach, you feel as though, oh, I feel a little nauseated. And if that happens, eat a little something before you give your speech. Maybe something with bread or crackers. Don't eat anything greasy because if you get this upset stomach, up might come the last meal. And you don't want that to happen. Dizziness, tingling sensations in your hands and in your feet. Other things might be trembling knees or sweaty palms, lightheadedness. And the lips, the tongue, The hard and soft palate and the teeth are called the articulator in speech and hearing science. The mouth only works with this lubricant called saliva. For some individuals, when they get nervous, the saliva glands slowly turn off, and before they know it, they have a dry mouth. So we tell students, be prepared, bring a beverage up here, usually water. Nothing with carbonation, and certainly nothing with caffeine. On the other hand, there are some people whose saliva glands open the floodgates and have too much saliva. It's okay to pause and swallow, because if you don't, you might go to say something with a p and a f, and there goes a little spitball. Don't want that to happen. Nervous, cough, or laugh. And of course, a shaky or strained voice. In addition, some of the ways we might stress out before, during, or after when it comes to emotional stress might be any of these. Feelings of overwhelmed fear, loss of control, depression, panic, all the way down to feelings of inadequacy. Just remember, sometimes our emotional states in our heart can control the psychological, which control the physiological. That's why, as James Allen, the social psychologist, in his book, As a Person Thinketh, So Will They Be, and even the great litigator, Johnny Cochran of the O.J. Simpson trial said, if you perceive it, you will achieve it. And that's good or bad. So think good thoughts. And as you think positively, you react the same way. Some of the ways we might tend to stress out psychologically might be, we might sit down and go, I forgot to say this, or I forgot to say that. Those are those little losses of memory that we had. It's only temporary. Negative thoughts or self-talk, you can't do that. Replace the I can't with the I can, or I've got this. Sometimes we might sit down and feel like we were all over the place, but if you follow your outline, you'll go from point A, B, all the way to Z, and you'll be just fine. Nervous repetition of words and or phrases, we call those vocal fillers. Or if you're from Canada, eh? In either event, how you can reduce your vocal fillers is write out your speech word for word, known as a manuscript, and start at the very first sentence. You can go all the way until there are no more, and you can reduce not only your anxiety, but also your amount of vocal fillers. And sometimes we have that really awkward If you do any of these, or any of these things resonate with you, you're not alone. In fact, some of the great entertainers, politicians, some of the great speakers of the 20th and 21st century all have experiences. All great speakers feel this at one time or another. In fact, you may or may not know this individual, but of all the people in Hollywood, the second most successful female of all of Hollywood history is Carol Burnett. The number one, Lucille Ball. Carol Burnett had a variety show that ran during the 1960s and 70s for 13 seasons. And anyone who is anyone in Hollywood, they wanted to be on her show. It's interesting, if you were to go in YouTube, and you could do this if you want, go to YouTube and type up closing credits to the Carol Burnett show, and as they're scrolling through the closing credits of all those who participated on the show, in the background, you will see an animated caricature of Carol Burnett mopping the floor. And when interviewed by Barbara Walters as to why she does this, here's a quotation she said. "The idea of making a speech terrifies me. I become a nervous wreck. I would rather scrub floors than give a speech." And this was one of her greatest accomplishments in college. She started her speech class not once, but twice, until finally the third time she passed it. Because every time it was time to give a speech, she'd run for the door. She was a part of the 40% of the high anxiety individuals. She was telling her theater director one day about her dilemma, And he says, yet you have no problem getting up on the stage and doing a role. And she would say, well, yeah, that's because I'm playing a character. And then he turns to her and says, here's a thought. Why don't you go to your speech class and pretend that you're a great first lady like Eleanor Roosevelt and play that role? And she said, oh my gosh, I never thought about that. And that's exactly what she did. And she passed her class with flying colors. If you don't know Carol Burnett, you might know this one, the most nominated female of all of Oscar history, Meryl Streep. I saw her win her very first Oscar 35 plus years ago. And her acceptance speech was so bad that Vanity Fair wrote about it in the next week. And they said that the Oscar committee should have rescinded the award for the worst acceptance speech ever. They said she couldn't even talk her way out of a wet paper bag. It was that bad. 30 years later, she wins another Oscar for her role as Margaret Thatcher in a movie called Iron Lady. And what a difference 30 years makes. Here's what she said. It's odd, I have this career that spans the globe, but the pathetic reality is that I cannot get up in front of a crowd of people and speak. I get very nervous and freak out. Not only these individuals, but these listed and or pictured here all have one thing in common. A high percentage, or being a part of the 40% of high anxiety individuals that would have rather bolted for the door than to give a speech. But they learned how to give a speech. Can you imagine no John F. Kennedy or Oprah Winfrey or Bill Clinton and many others? So how do we manage our apprehension? Well, there's what we call systematic desensitization. Now, I'm afraid of heights. And I just can't run up a ladder and go, okay, I'm cured. I might have to go up a few steps and get used to that. Go a few more steps, get used to that, and slowly but surely, with systematic desensitization, I get used to the height. Much like public speaking. That's why we have you come up here so many times, because the first time you might be really super nervous, but the second time, hopefully you're less nervous. The next time you're less nervous, and hopefully by the last time you come up here, you're a lot less nervous than when you once were, because you're getting acclimated and realizing it's no big deal. Cognitive restructuring. This is where James Allen said that as you think, so you become. You have to start saying, I've got this, rather than I don't. Visualization. There's a great NBA coach by the name of Phil Jackson, who not only coached the Chicago Bulls, but of course the Los Angeles Lakers. When he won his 6th NBA championship with the Bulls, we gave him a ticker tape parade down State Street, which we don't do for everyone, because he was going to retire. The great Michael Jordan was there, Scottie Pippen, and many others, Dennis Rodman. And after about 6 months of being retired, LA came knocking at the door of Phil Jackson and said, we'd like to give you all this money if you'll come and do for us at the Laker organization what you did for the Bulls. And it was more money than he could refuse. And during that year, he got a high school graduate by the name of Kobe Bryant and a trade, this Amazon of a guy by the name of Shaquille O'Neal. One thing about Shaquille O'Neal, one of the reasons he was traded, among many, was he couldn't shoot a free throw to save his life. Yeah, he could walk over there and drop it in, but if he got fouled and went to the foul line, he would drop it like a brick. So Scottie Pippen had an issue like that too. So Phil Jackson did for O'Neal what he did for Pippen. He said, O'Neal, come over here to the line. Here's an imaginary ball, and I want you to dribble, then shoot this ball and visualize it going in. Do that until I tell you you're done. Well, at first, he did this because, hey, this is the great Phil Jackson. But after a while, you can imagine how boring it got, and so he started to do to kind of goof around and mess around with some of the other Lakers and of course Kobe, to the point that Phil Jackson was getting upset. And O'Neal didn't want to do what the coach told him to do. So finally he said, you know what? Until you start doing what I'm going to tell you to do, you're not going to play any games. And O'Neal said, yeah, you are, because you need me. Well, he not only didn't play in the first game, second game, or third game, but that wasn't doing it. So then he had to say to O'Neal, I'll tell you what, not only am I not going to play you, but I'm going to fine you 10 grand for every game not played. And he went 3 more games. So now he hasn't played for 6 games, and now he's $30,000 in fines. That's when it clicked, and he said, Coach is serious. So he went, and he practiced how the coach told him to do that. And after several weeks, one day the LA Times reported that Jackson said, O'Neal, and he turned around and a ball came to him. He said, shoot 25 in a row, visualize. And then while he was shooting, he heard Jackson say, visualize, visualize. Well, the reporters counted, and out of 25 free throws that he shot, he got all 25 in a row. Thereafter, when O'Neal would get fouled and go to the free throw line, Jackson would yell, visualize, and O'Neal would get it in, and a new dynasty was developed, and Phil Jackson only got another 5 rings to make his total 11. He understood visualization. You have to visualize the greatness of your speech, and therefore your body will respond. Skills training, that's what this class is all about. We will help you to do that. So how do we speak without fear or nervousness? There are what we call 12 coping mechanisms or confidence building strategies. Here are the first 6. Know how you react to stress. That's why we have you fill out the form known as ART, Anxiety Reduction Tool. After that, know your strengths and weaknesses, and I'll do that with telling you what you do really well and telling you what you need to work on. And I can tell those students who read that because, yeah, they might make some of the same mistakes, but it won't be as many as they once did. And I can tell students when they're not because they keep making the same mistakes over and over again. So read the comments. Know the basic speech principles. We've all been taught them. Every speech is supposed to have an introduction that grabs our attention. You tell them what your topic is going to be and give them a preview of what your main points are going to be. You have a body that has no less than 2, but no more than 5, but sometimes on average 3 main points. And then you have a conclusion that reminds the audience of what your topic and what your main points were. And then you have a final thought. Those are the basic speech principles. Introduction, body, conclusion. Know that it always looks and feels worse on the inside. Now let me share with you something that we teach in interpersonal communication. In each and every one of us, we have what we call our self-concept. It's a relatively stable set of perceptions that answers the question, who am I? And it gives us what we call our sense of security in self. Well, within each and every one of us are 4 selves that reside. Right now, you're seeing my public self. I'm Kelly Brennan, speech instructor. But if you were to bump into me on the weekend and I'm in a polo shirt and my jeans, you might see the private Kelly. So there's a public self, a private self. And the private self is who we are when no one else is around. There is a desired self, and I know that exists, otherwise people wouldn't be taking this class. You're delaying your immediate gratification to go out and get a job so that you can get through college, courses like this, and then be able to go and have the qualifications to get the kind of job that you want. And then the last self is what I've been addressing for the last half hour. And that is the fearful self. This is the one that can stop you in your tracks. If you know this one, you can control this one. If you ignore it, it will control you. Know your speech. You can reduce your anxiety more than half by knowing your speech, and of course you do that by rehearsing. But here's the thing. You want to rehearse your speech 5 times from the beginning to the end. And no matter how many mistakes you make, just keep on keeping on. So the first time you go through, you'll have a few glitches. The second time, you'll have less. The third time, you have less. By the 4th or 5th time, you filled in all the potholes along the way, and you've learned the most important thing, to keep on keeping on. Because once you start your speech, for real, it's not like you can stop and say, can I start over? No, you gotta keep going. Believe in your topic. I can't tell you how many times students stand up and go, yeah, I'm really sorry about this, but no, believe in your topic. The audience will be a mirror image of what you are to them. If you're excited, they will be excited. You're apologetic, they will be too. All right, here's the last 6. View the speech-making process positively. Again, state of mind. Number 8, visualize success, the Phil Jackson phenomenon. Number 9, project confidence while speaking. Now don't mistake projecting confidence with volume. No one wants you yelling at them the entire time. We want to have peaks and valleys in our presentation. It's what we call the heartbeat of public speaking. Test your message by practicing in front of your friends, not family. Family, they'll tell you what they think you want to hear. I'm a father of 9. If any of my children are rehearsing their speech in front of me, I'm never going to say, wow, that's horrible. Drop the class. I'll be like, oh honey, that's nice. Continue to practice, you'll do well. Your friends are more honest. They'll be like, dude or dudette, that was horrible. And then make any adjustments you need to. Practice your delivery, again, a minimum of 5 times. Last but not least, learn from experience. Most importantly, this guy right here is Edward R. Murrow. He had a phrase that says, give yourself permission not to be perfect. He called it the locus of power. Find something that can give you a sense of positivity. Some people might have a good luck charm. They might have a lucky keychain. They might have a lucky coin. Or maybe they find a friendly face in the audience. Just find something that will help you to learn to channel that energy to serve you rather than hinder you. Edward R. Murrow was a pioneer CBS news reporter in London, England during the Great Second World War. He brought to the United States a show, it was a news documentary called This Is Your Nation. And it was basically a half-hour report of what was happening during the war. And they would show it during intermissions at movies. Now, Mr. Murrow was a smoker, and the camera person noticed that when Mr. Murrow was filming, he was calm and collected, but as soon as they weren't filming, he would smoke, like with both hands. And he was known to smoke like 4 packs of cigarettes a day. And yeah, he died at 57. Guess what from? Yeah, emphysema. But the cameraman said to him, Mr. Murrow, I noticed that when we're filming, you're just fine, but when we're not, you're all over the place. He said, that's because my locus of power is your camera light. When you say, and we're on, your recording light turns red, and I train the butterflies when that light is red to fly in formation. And I can hold that only so long, and then when you say we're out and that red light turns off, the butterflies go in all different chaotic patterns again. So my point here is learn how to channel your nervous energy to serve you while giving a speech just long enough to help you, and then when you're done, let them go to whatever place they want to go. So here are some other things to think about. Don't attempt to eliminate nervousness. No one will ever be able to eliminate it 100%. You can severely reduce it, but never eliminate it. Notice that nervousness is natural because it can be beneficial. It does show that you care. The key is, though, channeling that to serve you rather than hinder you. And here's the last thing to think about. How did you react to your situation? This is when you're sitting down with the anxiety reduction tool, and you're looking at not only how did you feel and what were you thinking during, but also after your speech. Did you remember what to say? If not, why? Did you lose your place? If so, what can you do differently? What techniques worked or maybe didn't work for you? What were you more or less nervous? And last but not least, how did the audience respond? I would love to be able to say that once you get done learning these techniques, and there are many out there, in fact, I would highly suggest looking up ways to cope with communication apprehension on the internet, and you will find several articles, not only written by Dr. Joseph Ayers and Timothy Huff, but many others that can give you some great insight and tips for being able to help you cope. If you don't get nervous, that's great. But it would be misleading for me to say that I can help you get rid of all that nervousness. No, because of our fight or flight gesture, we are going to be a little nervous. But like I said, it shows that we care. And it shows that we want to be our best. So if you can channel that to serve you rather than hinder you, that is the goal. So I hope that all of you learned today the importance of communicating with confidence, and to know that there's no such thing as a natural-born speaker or the perfect speaker. So one of the worst things to ever do in your head is to picture what you think is the perfect speaker and then try to emulate that, because then we become very robotic, very sterile, and of course, disconnected. Unfortunately, we call it in the wonderful world of public speaking the Al Gore complex. Al Gore was a great vice president to William Jefferson Clinton. But when he ran for the 2000 election, he didn't allow himself to not be perfect, and he always tried so hard to be perfect. And he came across as too rigid, too disconnected. And even though he might have been more intellectually and experientially more qualified than George W. Bush, because George W. Bush was like, how you all doing? And he had a good old boy mentality from Texas, he was more connectable, believable, and we want our speakers to be that. We call it charisma. And the only thing charisma is you being you and letting your personality out. I thank you for listening, and I hope you have a great day.